Hello there. I want to say thank you to everyone who has left a 5-star rating and personal review for True Tales from Old Houses. Throughout season 8, I've been asking if you could help the show by leaving positive ratings and reviews, and I am so grateful that you have taken the time to offer that feedback. Your ratings and reviews help potential new subscribers know that True Tales from Old Houses is worth a listen, and sharing each episode with a screenshot or link helps people find the show. So please keep those shares, 5-star ratings, and personal reviews coming. Let's blow up the internet and work together to get more people involved in old house life and invested in preserving their built environment. Thank you. In today's episode, Alex joins me for Listener Q&A. We talk about sourcing antique mail slots for a front door. And later, I chat with author David Giffels to discuss his book, All the Way Home: Building a Family in a Falling Down House. But first, I'm Stacy Grinsfelder from Blake Hill House, and you're listening to True Tales from Old Houses, episode 85. Hello, and welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed the October Ghost Story episodes because there were so many good ones this year, and it was really fun to be able to share one from Blake Hill House. If you've also had some wild and unexplainable happenings in your house, if you found yourself sort of feeling like, I'm on common ground with these stories, I would love to hear from you sometime. So keep us in mind for next year's spooky season episodes. There's a lot to enjoy in today's show, but before we dig in, I want to offer a quick thanks to our season 8 supporters, Sutherland Wells, Preservan, and The Window Course. These sponsors are handpicked to be relevant to you and the old house community. So please do take a look at what they offer and enjoy my coupon codes too. Those codes are always right in the show notes of the app that you use to listen to your favorite podcasts and also on our website. Okay, I have a little something to share with you. I was contacted this week by Tom Mann, who runs the Massachusetts Historic Preservation Corps, an AmeriCorps Student Conservation Association program that takes young adults looking to do a year of service and trains them in historic preservation. The Massachusetts Historic Preservation Corps is a year-long program for young adults aged 18 to 30 who want to learn the preservation trades and spend their time working to save old buildings on public lands. It's open to people from all over, and about half of their members moved from out of state. So you don't have to live in Massachusetts to apply for this program, although you will need to move there to enjoy the program. Students receive a biweekly stipend during the year and a monetary education benefit upon completion. They work on projects all over Massachusetts, focusing mostly on the National Parks of Boston and Department of Conservation and Recreation historic properties. So if you have any questions, I'm going to put the contact links right on our website, or you can just reach out to Tom through the Massachusetts Historic Preservation Corps on Instagram. The upcoming season starts February of 2023, and rolling admissions are open now. I think this could be an incredible gap year opportunity or sort of a taste of historic trade situation for a young adult considering a career shift. So if you have anyone in your life, or maybe it's you, that could benefit from a program like this one, if you would help me help Tom spread the word, that would be fantastic. The application closes December 16th, but again, it's a rolling admission process. So the sooner the better. I am definitely too old for this program, but I'm going to send the info to one of my sons and also to my niece. Now I have a few reminders. The Hudson Valley Live Audience event is this Saturday. I can't believe that it is less than a week away. It's Saturday, November 12th, and you can still pick up tickets for that. We will be gathering at Stonyford, which is the lovely home of Susan and Will Brenson, and tickets include post-show social time with Daniel Cantor, Susan and Will Brenson, Brad Huber, Reggie Young, and me. We can all nerd out with old house talk. You'll also get a house tour, a full house tour of Stonyford, light food and drink, and of course the recording of 2 episodes of True Tales from Old Houses with you in the audience. The ticket link is in the show notes and also on the website, and I hope you can come because we would love to meet you. And for everyone who has already bought their tickets, I'm so excited to see you. This is going to be great. In other travel news, I finally zeroed in on a date and booked a trip to Boston to see the Christmas tree in Boston Common. The tree is a yearly gift from Nova Scotia sent as a thank you for Boston's help during the Halifax explosion in the early 1900s. It's an ongoing story here on the podcast, and I'm starting to feel a bit like an investigative journalist. Although I suppose this really is more of a, a human interest story. Anyway, I'll be in Boston on Tuesday, December 6th to see the tree in Boston Common, record a short segment for the podcast, and hopefully some of you will join me for an informal old house gathering. So send me a message through the website or a direct message on social media to let me know if you can attend. And I cannot stress enough how informal this will be. I thought we could just go out for a quick, simple dinner or a drink, or maybe even just hang out at the tree. So don't sweat the details. As part of the ongoing Canadian connection, there is still room on the tour to Montreal, Quebec City, and the Canadian Maritimes that I'm hosting next August 10th through 20th. And of course, we will be stopping in Halifax during that trip. Now, I realize this tour is not a low-cost holiday, but it does include your airfare, which is not really that common with tours. Typically, that's a separate fee, and you're on your own in that regard. The flip side of that is that if you are able to get yourself to our meeting location by yourself with frequent flyer miles, what have you, there is a land-only price with the airfare portion omitted, and you can talk to a booking agent about that. You have until April to commit with a $200 deposit, and the price is set. It just is what it is. It's not going to go up. There's no false sense of urgency here. Your final payment is due on May 27th. If you find yourself making a shift towards experiences versus gifts, then booking this trip is probably right up your alley, especially as the holiday season begins. So if you want more information about the Montreal, Quebec City, and Canadian Maritimes tour, there is a link in the show notes, and I will update everyone about the Boston meetup in the newsletter and on Facebook and Instagram. If you'd like to subscribe to the newsletter, go to truetalesfromoldhouses.com/newsletter. And finally, I'm staying super, super busy with the guest bathroom remodel, writing travel guides for history and architecture travel, and window restoration. And you can read about all of that on the blog at blakehillhouse.com. Listener Q&A is up next. For today's listener Q&A segment, my friend, everyone's friend, Alex is back. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Stacy. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's always fun. We always have a good time here.
We do. We absolutely do.
Well, today's question comes from Instagram again. We've done Instagram questions before, and it comes from someone named Jen, and her username is A Prairie Hermitage on Instagram. And she asks, where can I find new or old mail slot hardware to restore a slot that was boarded up?
Well, I love the Instagram old house community. I mean, that is my favorite part of a favorite corner of the internet, let's say. And it's because of questions like this. You know, there are so many people who are out there really kind of searching for the right thing, and they want to do the cool stuff with their house. And I really appreciate that. And I love this question because this is going back to my very, very, very earliest days of working on our house. I think even before we settled on our house, we ended up going to a salvage yard to try to find some hardware that we would be putting into our house, finally several months later. But that was 20 years ago almost. And things have changed quite a bit in the last 20 years in terms of where you find stuff. It used to be that you had to go around some old salvage markets that you found in big cities and hopefully stumble on the right thing that you were looking for. But today, the internet is a wonderful place in opening up a huge variety of options on where to find things. However, the drawback is things are more expensive today than they were 20 years ago because the market has peaked a little bit more in terms of people looking and finding these things, not just stumbling on them in salvage yards.
Right, that's true. And honestly, even where I live, salvage yard prices can be pretty high. I'm always kind of shocked what they want for windows. I'm thinking, all these folks are just taking these out and you're asking, $40, $60 per window. I'm thinking, And then you have a whole second floor. Well, I'm talking exactly about my architectural salvage. I'm calling them out because they have an entire warehouse with a second floor full of old windows priced at like $60 each. You're going to have those for a really long time.
We have Community Forklift is one of the ones that I go to here in DC, and they ended up getting a huge window inventory that they were not able to move at a certain point. And they said, you know what, we need to get rid of this stuff. And they marked everything at $10 and put out something that said everything is $10. Every sash is $10. So I went in and stocked up on a bunch of old glass that I knew I would end up needing, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, that's great. So the mail slot.
Yes.
I'm like, oh yeah, we're talking about mail slots.
Back to our question.
Give me a minute and I'll turn it back to Windows. Sorry about that, Alex.
It makes sense. It's okay. We don't blame you one bit.
It's very on brand.
Yes. So the mail slot's a great question because we actually went through this. I think it was about 10 years ago. We were looking for a mail slot for our salvage front door that we were working on. And I went through looking for the perfect mail slot. I got several blog posts all about the whole process. And what I ended up finding was I was having the most luck on eBay. And I think eBay is still a great place for salvaged hardware. It's a place where you can find unique items that are very specific to your needs. But it's hit or miss. You have to be there at the right time. You have to have searches set up so that you can find the right, be there just when it hits. Etsy is another great place online for salvage hardware. I didn't think of this for years until a little while ago when I was looking for some rim locks, and Etsy had specifically what I was looking for. I was also able to find the replica hardware for our the doors in our house because it used to be an old hotel. I wanted to find numbers that matched the original numbers from our 1908 house. It took me 6 years until I found a seller on eBay or on Etsy that just happened to have these. So that's a great location to find it.
Yeah.
If you're interested in salvage yards, look locally for any salvage yards. And locally can be 90, 100-mile drive, locally into other big cities around you as well. And then there's also a few online antique salvage places that I tend to go to. Ed Donaldson Antiques, I think it's eddonaldson.com, has been around for 20 years. And I have consistently bought things from him every maybe year or two since we bought our house.
I've never heard of that, but I'm going to look it up and I'll put it in the show notes. And some of the brick and mortar architectural salvage places also ship.
Yes. And you'll find things too. I just bought some set screws for spindles on rim locks. I ran out of salvage ones that I needed, and I needed a bunch. I found somebody selling on eBay. I bought them. 50 of them came. I looked at the package. It came from Ed Donaldson. So, that's the sort of thing. Like, there's a lot of overlap in this too. Ed Donaldson is great just because it's really well organized on the website. Another online antique place that I go is Mowry Antiques. It's Mowry, I think.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes too.
Yeah, if you Google that or check in the show notes, they'll be there. Same sort of deal. They're very well organized. I think trying to put a feeler out, this is another place to do this. If you have apps like Nextdoor, look around on Reddit, there's subgroups for this sort of thing. Put out what you're in search of. If you've got an idea, you have an inspiration photo, something like that, people can find it. Also, Pinterest is a great way to at least find old dead links of people that might have had the stuff that you're looking for, and then you can go from there. And then it becomes all about asking around for the thing you're looking for and hopefully getting lucky and stumbling on it in the right place in some places. Like if you went to a giant antique show like the Brimfield Antique Show up in Massachusetts.
That's true.
Fields, acres to go look and hopefully stumble on the thing that you're looking for.
Right. And I want to come back to Etsy really quickly because they do have replicas as well as architectural salvage too. So if for some reason you just think, you need your mail slot now, you don't have the time to wait to look around, there are people on Etsy who are still making these and they look pretty good.
I would say one thing about the mail slot too, something that I learned through experience. Antique mail slots, true antique salvage mail slots, are much smaller than modern day mail slots. And we're talking, I'd say, maybe 5 inches across for a traditional mail slot, where modern mail slots are more around 9 inches across because of what typically gets delivered. So we've got our antique mail slot on our inner door and our regular mail slot on our outer French doors. And there's like a small 3-foot vestibule there. And we just want everybody to deliver stuff through the outer doors, because when they try to deliver them through the inner door, the salvage mail slot, all of our mail gets folded in half, smashed, and then pushed through the door and usually gets torn up. So keep that in mind, that sometimes reproduction modern is better because the size will work better with modern size mail, magazines, deliveries, that sort of thing.
Right. That's a great point. I never would have thought of that. But have you ever seen an old letter or something like you find one at your grandma's or in some sort of museum? They're so tiny.
They're so small. Yeah.
And their penmanship was so hard to read, although, and I mean, you and I probably both grew up on cursive, but I still find myself struggling like, what? What are you trying to say?
I think there's a certain penmanship from back then that was everyone who lived before a certain date had the same style of beautiful but illegible writing.
Yes. It was all about the presentation, I believe.
Yes.
Jen, thank you so much for your question. And Alex, it's always a pleasure to have you here. So you have great ideas and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And for everyone else, if you have an old house or DIY question that you would like for me and a guest to answer on an upcoming episode, you know what to do. Please send me a direct message via Facebook or Instagram, or visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com and submit your question right through the contact form. Bye, Alex.
See you later.
And now it is my turn to ask you a question. This season, I want to know, regarding old house ownership, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? And here are a couple of your answers. Rachel wrote, everything is fixable, but also prepare to have to fix literally everything. That answer cracked me up because it is so accurate. And Candace said, I wish I'd known that the creaks and groans of old houses are normal. I worried about the house falling down way too much in the beginning. I would be willing to bet that many of us have felt that same way. If you have an answer to this season's question and you would like to leave a voicemail, head on over to truetalesfromoldhouses.com and click on the mic icon on the bottom right-hand corner of the page. Follow the prompts from there. You may use your phone or your computer as long as it has a mic. And you're also welcome to submit your answer through the contact page or send me a message through social media. Once again, this season's question is, regarding old house ownership, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? Let me know. It's time to take a pause. True Tales from Old Houses continues only because of the generous support from our sponsors. Once again, we are supported by the Window Course from Scott Seidler of the Craftsman blog. The Window Course is a step-by-step, do-it-yourself window restoration program that will teach you everything you need to know to successfully restore your wood windows. The Window Course offers all of the start-to-finish video instruction you need right now. And hands down, Scott is one of the best teachers in the business. You're going to learn so much. I know that a lot of us are wrapping up the hardcore window restoration projects of summer, but these colder months are the perfect time to take the Window Course. You have time to truly absorb the content so that you can hit the ground running in the spring. And there are also plenty of smaller window restoration tasks that you can tackle during the fall and winter. The course is self-paced, so you can go fast or slow, and there are several price points to fit your needs and budget. If you sign up for the Lifetime Access Package or the Training Package, then you'll get a free infrared paint remover, which is a $130 value. And even better, the Window Course is offered with a money-back guarantee, and I've got an active coupon code to share. Scott is offering True Tales from Old Houses listeners a special discount. For 10% off, visit thewindowcourse.com and use the coupon code TrueTales. True Tales from Old Houses is also supported by Sutherland Wells, maker of exceptional polymerized tung oil finishes since 1965. All of the Sutherland Wells products are handcrafted in Providence, Rhode Island with the highest quality, sustainably grown tung oil. Tung oil, native to China, has been used for centuries as a durable finish for wood, metal, and stone. And unlike polyurethane, tung oil finish penetrates the surface of wood so it flexes and contracts as conditions change, making it the perfect pre-finish or protectant for everything from fine furniture to window sash and sills. I've started adding Sutherland Wells products to my oil primer for added flexibility and penetration, most recently on a window jamb as part of the bathroom remodel, and I am so pleased about how smooth the top coat of paint looks now. Now, specifically for pre-coat, I use Clarabelle's, but I also recently used Millie's as a standalone finish on a mid-century walnut dresser in my office. Coincidentally, Millie is also the name of my sweet dog, but Millie's tongue oil smells much better. It smells like oranges, whereas my Millie smells like dog. Sutherland Wells has an entire product line for whatever you're working on right now. Siding, hardwood floors, furniture restoration, cutting boards, you name it. To learn more about the complete product line, visit Sutherland Wells, WELLES, that's sutherlandwells.com. And to save 10% on your first order, use the coupon code TRUETALES. True Tales from Old Houses is also supported by Preservan, a unique preservation franchise opportunity developed by longtime window restoration pro and friend of the podcast, Ty McBride. The mission of Preservan is to save the future by preserving the past. So what exactly is Preservan? Well, what if you could go to work every day on your own terms while also doing something meaningful within your community? What if you could start a home service business without owning complicated and expensive tools that are difficult to transport to and from job sites? The team at Preservan will train and support you to operate a Preservan business in your community, equipping you with the tools you need to perform sustainable wood rut repairs and build your own team of epoxy techs. You'll receive the playbook for a proven preservation business, exclusive access to Everresin epoxy products, business software, and all of the marketing, advertising, training, and technical support you need. Owning a Preservan franchise offers the perfect opportunity for work-life balance while serving your neighbors and community in a recession-proof industry. You'll get to work your own hours and spend the rest of your time in ways that are important to you. To learn more about becoming part of the Preservan family and their mission, go to Preservan, Preservan. Go to preservanfranchise.com/truetales. My guest today is David Giffels. David is an author, essayist, journalist, and lifelong resident of Akron, Ohio, whose Rust Belt soul is at the heart of much of his work.
I'm David Giffels. I'm a writer in beautiful Akron, Ohio, author of the book All the Way Home, Building a Family in a Falling Down House, and some other books too.
Hi, David. I am so happy to have the opportunity to meet you today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
I think so too. I have to give a little shout out first to a longtime listener and friend of the show, Joe Peterson. He is working on his own never-ending home restoration in New Brunswick, Canada. And he is a big fan of yours, David, and he pointed me in your direction. So, Joe, thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Hey, Joe, I've been here 25 years, and this afternoon I'll be on a ladder tuck pointing the brick that I've never gotten to. So have faith.
He'll be happy to know that. He's been looking forward to this interview. All right, so let's just get this first question out of the way. You bought your house in 1998. You've lived in it for approximately 25 years. How close to being done?
I think I already answered that. I mean, there's a quote in the book from my very wise father who said of any house, it's only finished when you sell it or you die. So we haven't sold it. I haven't died. So yeah, I mean, in a more direct sense, there are parts of this house that I've probably redone twice since the initial round. And there are parts of this house that I still have not laid a finger on. The billiards room, which has a presence all through the book. It was like one of the selling points of the house, but also one of the ridiculously over the top facets of a house that was too big and too opulent and too everything. So the billiards room was like the jumping the shark point. And the billiards room looks exactly like it did the night my brother and I tore down the ceiling, that was collapsing. And I haven't gotten any further than that.
Your dad's quote is actually here on the sheet in front of me because I appreciate that so much. One of the favorite things I tell people is that I'm going to die with a paintbrush in my hand. That's generally, I'm like, you're going to find me. I'm going to be in the foyer, dead, paintbrush in my hand. That's where I'll be. Just take me out, bury me on the property somewhere.
Every time I go up a ladder, my wife assumes she'll find me dead at the bottom of it that afternoon. So.
Oh, that's really funny. Well, I have read the book, but for everyone who has not, could you give us some context for All the Way Home, building a family in a falling down house?
Yeah. Essentially, my wife, Gina, and I, early in our marriage, had bought a sort of fixer-upper, modest middle-class house in Akron, Ohio, a Rust Belt city where old housing stock was abundant and affordable. And we were about to have our first child. So basically just we needed another bedroom was the basic math of it. And we kind of went looking. It wasn't urgent. So we had time to look around, which was dangerous because we started to dream. And then we started looking at houses that were far beyond our means. And there's a lot of beautiful brick Tudor architecture in the old like Millionaires Row part of Akron. And we came across this house in a neighborhood we knew well, but it was like hidden behind all this dense overgrowth. And there was a for sale sign fallen down in the weeds near the curb. And we stopped and we, like Hansel and Gretel going through the forbidden forest, we approached this thing. And it was this overload of information of grandeur and size and stained glass windows and intricate brickwork and chimneys and a waterfall and pond out in the back, but also just even from that initial view, we could just see just huge holes rotted through the roof. The old copper gutters were just dangling from whatever was still holding them up, broken windows and bricks laying on the ground where they had fallen out of the house and just complete wreckage. And long story short, somehow after probably hundreds of people had entertained the idea of rescuing this old house, because we learned this later, everyone we talked to is like, oh yeah, we thought about that. And but no way, we bought it. So yeah.
And that story of buying it was very stressful to read. I can only imagine how stressful it was to actually go through it.
Yeah, the house had been occupied by by then elderly woman who had lived there. She had married into the family that owned this home in the 1940s, and she had lived there ever since. Her husband had passed away in the mid 1960s, and we could pretty much tell that that was the last time any maintenance had been done on the house. And it had slowly started to decay around her. And finally, I think it had just gotten to the point where she realized she could no longer exist there. She was this tiny little hunched over woman with osteoporosis and in some ways, like kind of a total badass to continue to exist in a house that was completely overwhelming. It was more than I could handle as a young, capable person. And she was managing it, but it was too much. So, but by the same token, she really wasn't ready to leave. And so Gina and I couldn't get this house out of our system. We were just like, every time we thought, this is too impractical. This is, we're trying to become adults here. And this is our statement as adulthood. We're going to buy a proper home and start our family. But we wouldn't it be amazing to have the Christmas tree over there next to that grand hearth? There's 6 fireplaces in this house. Like we could put a Christmas tree by every fireplace, like all this stuff. And, like kids could run through the back staircases for servants. And so to get it out of our system, we just decided we would make this lowball offer that we assumed would be rejected. And so we did through the agent that we were using, who was a family friend. And he calls me one night, Gina was at home, and he says, hey, guess what? She accepted your offer. And I was like, oh, well, I need to talk to Gina about this. Like, I thought, well, we were just bluffing. And he's like, no, this means you bought that house. You can't change your mind now. And what we discovered, the reason she had accepted this offer that we assumed she wouldn't is because she had just been hit like a couple days before with a stack of papers from the health department that were like final orders. They were going to condemn the house. So it was this terrible rigmarole that we went through, but we ended up owning it.
Wow. Yeah.
I had to kind of bluff the health department, just charm them as much as I could to say, yeah, we'll fix everything eventually.
Let's go back to the elderly owner just briefly, because it was interesting when I was reading that in your story. I think it started out reading one way. I had a lot of sympathy for this woman who things just got out of hand. I think part of it is that I live in a house with a similar situation. It's just that her husband died 30 years later. So there was a little bit more maintenance between her husband's death and the purchase of the house. But then in your true fashion, you got really to the heart of it. And there's this quote in the book that really, again, I tear up a little bit now and then when I read books, but if you don't mind, I'll read it. Is that okay, the quote?
Sure, yeah.
So I guess you had come back to the house and it was, I think at this point, technically yours, but she had not vacated the property yet. Or maybe it was slightly before. And she had been coming home with some groceries and she was trying to get her grocery sack, I think, into the house or something. And it just kind of hit you. You were frustrated because you'd been through all of this, like you said, the runaround with, now you knew that the health department was involved. It was hard to close on this house. She wouldn't leave. And then you saw her kind of taking her groceries in, hunched over. And the quote was, "This was somebody's home. Somebody bought food at the store and brought it here to eat. Somebody's life inside there would be ending soon in exchange for mine beginning." That just really touched me because, in the moment, I think we get really frustrated with past owners. And when we're really passionate about our old houses, we tend to think somehow that we are the only people who have made good decisions about their upkeep. But that's just not true. People love these places in their own way.
Yeah, I think, in most cases, a house where a family has lived is imprinted, with psychic information. I mean, it's not, I don't think of houses so much as an economic commodity as I do as like a part of the soul of a family and of a city. And, in fact, I'm not a very practical person. So I'm not like, I'd be a terrible real estate agent, but by the same token, there's still, even after all, I have touched every square inch of this house in the ongoing process of salvaging it. And yet I still feel in some ways like this is Mrs. Radner's. I think it's the ghost of scent, but I still sometimes smell cat pee. Like, I think just the memory that's still, because that doesn't leave your memory. Just things like that. And I've kept artifacts that were left behind by her. And it's not even to honor. I don't know. It just seems like it's like a shared continuum. We're the fourth owners, and I've got things, little things that I've found from the first two as a record of them as well.
We've talked frequently on this podcast about the years that most of us spend in our old house are really only one chapter in a really long book.
Yeah. There's a little anecdote later in the book. One day I was doing some work that required me to open up the void under the basement, one of the basement staircases, and go into this, like dusty, empty space which was closed off as a wall with the stair treads above me. And I just, on a whim, I took a pencil in there and I started to write a story down the stud inside that space of our family there. And I did it, like as far as I could write down, one space of a 2x4. And then I closed off the wall, finished the job and closed off the wall and drywalled over it with the hope that someday, 100 years from now, somebody will go in there and be like, oh, some weirdo used to live here. And this is his story.
Is it a manifesto or is it just a story?
It was really just, it was pretty direct. It was, and I think if I remember, I think I actually sort of like addressed it to some future savior of this house.
That's nice. Have you done any other time capsule things?
The house is kind of a time capsule.
True.
Really
true.
is. There's so many things. No, we haven't really done anything like that. The book is sort of its own time capsule, I guess.
There are so many anecdotes in the book, and I'm torn between talking about them and just letting people read them, because there's something about reading them.
They need to pay their money.
Yeah. You've got an old house to fix up.
I got mouths to feed.
Right. Well, All the Way Home was published in 2009, I think, and you wrote the postscript in, is it 2018? What is this? 2018. I've lost track now. My question is all messed up. I've put the wrong dates on here.
Yeah, no, the postscript, it was published in 2008, and then the postscript appeared in the paperback edition, which was 2009.
Okay, so that was later. And so here we are. We're 14 years past that, right? Is that right?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you've been through a lot in that house. You've raised 2 children there, not to give all of it away, but you've coped with miscarriages, the loss of your in-laws, your parents. How have your feelings about creating a home and the house changed?
I mean, this is true in the book, but it's become even more true since, is that one of the reasons that we bought this house was to sort of formally establish the fact that we were remaining in our hometown, where both our families are. We had opportunities to leave and had considered leaving. And if you know anything about this area of the country and a city like Akron, it's often easier to leave it than to love it, and that's been sort of the tale of the post-industrial Midwest, of brain drain and departure. And so we decided to stay, in great part because we're close with our families and we wanted to do that. And because this house is so big, and Gina especially comes from a great big Sicilian American family. And so this has become the gathering place, in part just because it's big enough to hold everybody. And so we host the big Thanksgiving gathering, annual holiday parties for both families. Yeah, so I guess that part of the house as more than just ours has kind of become its evolution and its ongoing presence in our life. And also, I mean, this is true. One of the things I loved about writing this book was I was on book tour for a long time, like 2 years basically, of doing nothing but talk about this book and many different places, and realizing what I think I already knew is that this is so many other people's experience too. I mean, it's a very extreme example, but it's not much different than anyone else who's taken on something like this. And anyone who has knows that it's a lifestyle to live in a house like this. I mean, if you live in an old house, you just know that you have to know how to jimmy the front door to get it to close and latch properly. And it's just part of opening and closing the front door. And you just know that your weekends will be spent fixing things, either staying ahead of the process or catching up with it.
Right.
Because the house is just going to keep fighting back. Yeah, so it's just become who we are. I mean, we're reaching a point where we're in that sort of empty nest that seems to stop. Kids are coming and going at this point. But sometime in the nearish future, I mean, when we have been alone here, it's a huge house. Like, this is a lot. We're going to have to talk about living somewhere else, smaller and more manageable. We can't even go past that because it just seems like this is who we are.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions for you, is if you were thinking about your own exit strategy. I think you and I are kind of in that, I don't know, do we call it the sandwich generation? I still have some parents that are making some decisions, or will need to make some decisions for their own old house, coming right up. And then I have kids that are coming up, and I can barely even think about what I'm going to do next. But I know, when you watch that happen to a different generation, it becomes more urgent that you have a good exit strategy, or solid exit strategy, I guess I should say.
Yeah, we've been through both our parents' downsizing process. And we try to remember to try to get rid of stuff now, so they don't have to deal with the one dumpster maybe, but no more than that. I don't know. But then there's always that, like, no one's going to take care of this house the way, what I really mean is the way I took care of it, but I'd like to say the way I want to be taken care of, but I'm really being very selfish. I'm like, no one's going to care about it as much as I did, that that feeling. So it's hard to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you still feel somewhat superhuman too and driven to just do projects all the time?
Well, it's weird. Like, not driven is definitely what I was in the beginning, because it was like, because as I read in the book, I mean, part of this was that this was relatively early in our marriage, and but like I had promised Gina that I could do this, and I think I was like innocent and arrogant enough to believe it myself. And what happens, and perpetually in the book, is I'm completely confronted with my own fallibility, my own ego checks. But I can't admit that to the person I made this promise to. And so there was this constant. So the drivenness of the experience is in great part because I had to uphold the image I had given to the person I loved the most in the world, even though she probably would have been fine with me saying, I can't do all this.
Right.
But now it's less driven and more like I still love to wrap my head around a new project, a problem to be solved, dig into it, and then have it sort of take over. And like I'll wake up in the middle of the night, like solving a problem of how to fix, how to do this tuck pointing. I'd like been teaching myself how to tuck point. There was a lot of big gaps in the bricks that had been here since we moved in. I finally spent this summer. That was my big summer project. Like, how will I do this tomorrow? Like, how am I going to cut that brick? The things like that. I really love to get, sort of completely immersed in a project. And I think that's true of most people who love to work on, to rehab old houses is that sort of problem solving, do it yourself satisfaction.
I agree. Is there anything you would have done differently?
Oh. More than I taught myself how to tuck point by using my house as the experiment. So like the early parts sections are very amateur looking. I'm really good at it now, but I'm on the fourth side of a four-sided house. So
it's actually funny that you mentioned that because I've done some tuck pointing myself. And as I was reading the first section in your book where you were talking about it, I was thinking, oh, I wonder how that looks. You were describing the process you were using for tuck pointing.
A friend said, "Oh, you get a pastry bag and you mix up the mortar kind of thin and you just squeeze it in like frosting and it just goes right in." And fortunately, where I did that was, and that was like years ago, was in a section that's like sort of hidden and covered. And I look at it now, it looks like a little kid smashed Play-Doh up against the side of the house and didn't get in trouble for it.
And then you planted a bush in front of it, right? Or something. That's
good.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, every season I ask the audience a question, and this season's question is one that I think you could probably answer very well. And it is pertaining to old house ownership. What do you wish you knew then that you know now? Is there anything you wish that you knew going in, or is the fact that you didn't know maybe the best part?
Well, definitely it's the best part. I mean, the only thing that got us through the first spell is that we didn't know what we didn't know. So I guess it's not a practical thing. It's more that it's okay not to get it all done at once. One thing that I've slowly learned, not so much from this house, but from my father, who worked with me so much on this and other things, but was kind of is still, even 4 years after he passed away, my mentor, is patience. And I'm not really good at patience yet, but you don't have to work until 8:00 Sunday night and turn around and get up and go to work the next morning. It's okay to let it take its time. So I guess that's one thing.
There was an interesting part in the book, too, where you were talking about your wife, Gina, and you were talking about how you're so driven and she just wanted to like go to the zoo on the weekends or whatnot, And I thought, gosh, I think I'm a composite character of you and Gina both, because I both want to get the work done, but I also want to go to the zoo on the weekends. Kids kind of forced the issue. Were you able to just carve out a different life outside of your home?
I mean, honestly, like one of my regrets is that I never balanced it great. I wasn't absent at all. But I spent a lot of time working on this house that I wouldn't have spent, that I would have spent with my children when they were younger. So I wish it wouldn't have taken as much of my time in those years as it did. Interesting that you mentioned that, like, that tension was there throughout, especially in those years of Gina trying to balance out my life and time. What's interesting is the great allure of this house for her. She grew up in a very working class family. Akron was the home of the rubber industry, and both her parents had been factory workers in the tire factories. There was 7 kids. They lived in a house with 1 bathroom, a very modest working class neighborhood. And so this house represented a kind of lifestyle that she imagined was a life of luxury and comfort. And it has 5 bathrooms, 6 girls and 1 boy
Oh my
with
goodness.
1 bathroom. Yes. So this was going to solve that problem. So she moves into a house with 5 bathrooms and none of them work. And so part of that tension was like, no, I'll give you, from me, like, I'll give you this leisurely castle that's not leisurely at all. It's like constant work to try to. And so I think she, for good reason, imagined that at some point that this will be a house that will give her that sense of comfort. And now it's just perpetually that tension still exists. Like, still, do we take an afternoon off? So we're both teachers and we have the summers free. And so we've come to this sort of balance where we make sure that we take days to spend time together and just do something that normal people do when they're off of work.
I'm married too, and it's always nice when we discover, gosh, we really like spending time together. This is pretty great.
I mean, that was one of the silver linings of the pandemic. It was like, we were both in the house together 24/7, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna be really great when we're retired. Like, we really like spending time with each other. So 34 years into the marriage.
I think a lot of people struggled with the pandemic, but my husband and I actually found the same thing. So we've been married for 27 years. I hope he doesn't listen to this because it's either 27 or 28. He'll know. He's the one who will know.
Okay.
All right. Well, it seems like you don't take yourself too seriously. And I think that's maybe the secret sauce for taking on a long-time house restoration like yours. At some point you just have to laugh because things become completely absurd.
Yeah.
The more you watch things break, the more absurd it becomes.
Oh, no kidding.
So did I read a little something about a potential TV show? Is that something you want to talk about?
Yeah, so the book has been optioned by a producer and is in development as a television show. So it's just now reaching the point where the full pitch presentation has been developed. The concept of the show is complete, and we're just now in the process of starting to make the contacts through our agent to see if there's any buyer out there, any of the networks that are interested in a show. I can guarantee you that All the Way Home is 300 pages that only covers the first year. We have enough material for 20 seasons or more. So I hope it's going to happen, I know enough about these things to know that you don't get too high or too low about it. So we'll see.
Well, if it comes out, I'll watch it for sure. And I think a lot of my listeners will also watch it. I think it'd be
good.
Great. I'm picturing it as a comedy. Would that be correct? A dramedy? What would we call it?
It would definitely be a dramedy. I mean, it's being cast as a half-hour comedy drama. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of heart in your writing, for sure.
Thanks.
Well, before we say goodbye, I wondered if you could just please tell everyone where they can learn more about you and your work and your books.
Sure. I have a website that's davidgiffels.com. All the information about my books and writing and so forth is on there. And all of the books are available wherever you buy books.
Now, we don't have time to talk about another book that you've written that I am just loving, but it's called Furnishing Eternity, A Father, a Son, a Coffin, and a Measure of Life. And it, like I said, we don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but do you want to just give a quick synopsis of that? Because it's really touching and I highly recommend it.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, my dad was very much an enabler in this process. You know, he was an engineer, but also a very creative spirit and free spirit, and also didn't take himself very seriously. And so in our ongoing life of me learning how to build and fix things from him, and always loving spending time in his workshop with him, as he was nearing his 80s, I came up with this harebrained idea that I was going to build my own coffin. And there's a long story behind that. That's in the book. And he was like totally game. He's like, sure, we could do that. And so the book is really, I think of it as a sequel to All the Way Home, because my dad's very much a presence in All the Way Home, but I felt like I really wanted to write about him. But I also secretly, I just wanted to make up a reason to spend more time in his workshop with him. And so it took us 4 years to do it. It probably took us about a month to do it in real time, but it took us 4 years to build this thing. And that book came out in January of 2018, and 3 days later he died. And that's sad, but it's also like, to me, it's like the sort of capstone of my version of him that exists in my storytelling life. And so I just love that his spirit is captured in Furnishing Eternity. And real quick, after we spent 4 years building my coffin and making all kinds of mistakes, and he decided that he was going to build his own. And it took him about 3 weeks, and it was beautifully simple. Every element of his personality was in it, and he stole the show.
That's wonderful. That's sweet and sad and happy and all those things.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you. What I'd like to do, if you're open to it, is give away a signed copy of your book, All the Way Home, Building a Family in a Falling Down House. Would that be okay?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, let's do it.
You and we will hammer out those details later. And then for everyone else, I will put all of the pertinent information for the book giveaway directly in the show notes.
All right. I've got a hammer, so we can do that.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, hammer away. Gosh, I'm always full of house puns, but yeah.
Yeah, I walked right into that one.
You did. Yeah, and they're inadvertent house puns, I must admit, too. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today, David. It was so nice to meet you.
Oh, thanks, Stacy. It was great to spend time with you.
Thank you for listening to True Tales from Old Houses, and thank you to my guests, Alex Santantonio and David Giffels. To enter to win a signed copy of All the Way Home, Building a Family in a Falling Down House, go to truetalesfromoldhouses.com/giveaway from now through November 25th. And to continue the conversation, join me on Facebook and Instagram at True Tales from Old Houses and Blake Hill House. And to learn more about everything we discussed in today's episode, visit truetalesfromoldhouses.com. Until next time.